The blizzard hit Frosthaven like a hammer striking an anvil. One moment the sky was gray and heavy with the promise of snow. The next moment the world disappeared into white chaos. Wind screamed across the frozen plains. Snow fell so thick you could not see your hand in front of your face. Jake Miller stood in his kitchen, watching the weather display on the wall screen. The numbers kept climbing in the wrong direction. Wind speeds now at 90 miles per hour and still rising. Temperature had dropped to 40 below zero and falling fast. Visibility was measured in feet, not miles. Zero. Complete whiteout. This was the kind of storm that killed people. Jake had lived on Frosthaven for 5 years now, long enough to know that the planet had two faces. In summer it was beautiful. Rolling green hills, clear blue skies, warm enough to work outside in just a shirt. The growing season was short but productive. You could almost forget you were on a frontier world at the edge of settled space. But winter was different. Winter on Frosthaven was a killer. The temperature could drop 60 degrees in an hour. Blizzards came out of nowhere and lasted for days. The wind was strong enough to knock over vehicles, to tear buildings apart if they were not built solid. Jake had lost neighbors to storms like this. Good people who made one mistake, who went outside at the wrong time, or got caught away from shelter. The cold did not care. The storm did not forgive. Jake checked his supplies out of habit. Generator fuel was good for 2 weeks. Food for a month. Water tanks were full. The greenhouse had its own heating system and backup power. He could ride out the storm easy. Had done it before. Would do it again. The perimeter sensor pinged. A soft beep from the security panel. Motion detected at the front gate. Jake frowned at the screen. Nothing should be moving in this weather. The wildlife on Frosthaven had evolved to sense storms coming. They would be deep in burrows or caves by now, hunkered down and waiting it out. The few other homesteaders scattered across this region would be locked down tight in their own houses. Nobody was stupid enough to travel in conditions like this. He pulled up the camera feed. The image was grainy, static lines running through it from interference. The snow was so thick the camera could barely see anything. But there were shapes, dark against the white. Multiple shapes huddled together against his gate. People, or something, out in the storm, dying. Damn it, Jake muttered. He was already moving, grabbed his heavy winter coat from the hook by the door. The coat was rated for extreme cold, triple insulated with heating elements woven into the fabric. He pulled it on and sealed it tight, grabbed his emergency medical kit from the shelf, clipped the safety line to his belt. The line was attached to a spool inside the house, thin cable strong enough to hold his weight. If he got disoriented in the storm, he could follow the cable back. It had saved his life twice already. The cold hit him the moment he cracked the door open, hit him like a physical thing, like a fist to the chest. The wind tried to rip the door out of his hands, tried to tear it off the hinges. Jake leaned his weight against it, pushed through, got outside, and let the door slam shut behind him. The world was white, just white, snow and wind and cold. The wind roared in his ears, pulled at his coat, tried to knock him down. Jake activated his safety line and started walking, one step at a time, leaning into the wind, following the path he knew led to the front gate. It took 5 minutes to walk 100 feet. Each step was a fight. The snow was already knee-deep and getting deeper. The wind kept changing direction, hitting from the side, from behind, trying to spin him around, make him lose his bearings. The gate loomed out of the white, metal bars already half buried in snow, and huddled against it were the shapes he had seen on camera. There were 12 of them. 12 figures collapsed in the snow, their bodies pressed together for warmth that was not there. Therein, Jake recognized them immediately, even through the snow. The insectoid aliens from 3 systems over. Their bodies were covered in chitin, hard shell-like plates that overlapped like armor. Normally, the chitin was a beautiful blue-gray color, iridescent, catching light in interesting ways. But now it was dull, covered in frost and ice. They had multiple limbs, 6 arms folded against their torsos trying to conserve heat. But Theron evolved on a hot world, a desert planet where water was scarce and the temperature never dropped below comfortable. They were not built for this cold, not built for Frosthaven winter. Jake could see ice forming on their carapaces, thick crystals spreading across the chitin. Their movements were slow, sluggish, bodies shutting down. They were dying, would be dead in another 10 minutes if he did not do something. They were all female. Jake could tell by the size. Female therein were smaller than males, more delicate shell patterns, different proportions. A group of 12 females with no males. That was unusual. Therein traveled in family groups, mixed gender, but this was all female. One of them looked up at him, raised her head with obvious effort. For eyes, compound eyes like an insect but larger, more expressive, black and shining. Right now they were filled with fear and desperate hope. "Please," she said. Her voice was thin, weak, but the translator device on her chest worked even in the cold, converted her clicking speech into words Jake could understand. "Shelter, just until storm passes. Please." Jake did not ask questions, did not hesitate, did not stop to think about why 12 therein females were at his gate in the middle of a blizzard. None of that mattered. What mattered was they were dying, and he could stop that. "Come on," Jake shouted over the wind. "All of you, get up. We need to move now." He helped the first one up. She was light, lighter than a human her size would be. The chitin was strong but not heavy. He got her on her feet, pointed toward the house. The lights were barely visible through the snow, but they were there, a beacon. "Follow the lights," Jake said. "Stay together. Don't stop moving." He went down the line, got each of them up. Some could walk on their own. Others needed support. He ended up half carrying 2 of them. Their bodies were so cold, like carrying ice sculptures. The trip back to the house took forever. The therein were not built for walking through deep snow. Their legs were wrong for it. They kept stumbling, falling. Jake and the stronger ones had to help the weaker ones, had to keep everyone moving. Finally, they reached the door. Jake got open, started pushing them inside, into the warm, into safety. They collapsed in his entry hall, all 12 of them, a pile of chitin and limbs and desperate breathing. Jake sealed the door behind them, locked out the storm. The sudden quiet was shocking, just the sound of the wind outside and labored breathing inside. He cranked up the heat. The house was already warm, but he pushed it higher, grabbed every blanket he owned. Hot water bottles from the emergency supplies. He distributed them among the therein, trying to warm them slowly. Too fast, and the thermal shock could kill them. Their bodies needed time to adjust. It took 2 hours. 2 hours of watching, of checking vital signs with his medical scanner, of adjusting blankets and heat. 2 hours before they stopped shivering, before their chitin started showing healthy color again instead of that dull frost-covered gray. The eldest spoke first. She was older than the others. Jake could tell by the scarring on her carapace. Old injuries, healed but visible. She pushed herself up into a sitting position, her 4 eyes focused on Jake. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was stronger now, clearer. "You saved our lives. I am Tessa. We are in your debt." "You're welcome," Jake said. "What were you doing out in that storm? You must have known it was coming." Tessa looked down at her hands, at the other there and around her. "We are war widows," she said quietly. "Our males died in the border conflict 6 months ago. Our hive declared us worthless. Discarded property. They dumped us at the nearest colony and left." "War widows," Jake repeated. He had heard about the border conflict. Skirmishes between therein and another species. Nothing major, but people had died. "Without males, we have no status in therein society," Tessa continued. "No value. We are nothing. We try to find work, find shelter. But no one wants widows. We ran out of money, out of options. The storm caught us between settlements." She looked up at Jake, those black eyes full of something Jake recognized. Desperation, the look of someone who had accepted they were going to die and then been given an unexpected reprieve. "We have nothing to offer you," Tessa said. "No money, no skills you would value. We can only beg for mercy. Let us stay until the storm passes. Then we will leave. We will not burden you." Jake looked at the 12 Theron females huddled in his entry hall, looked at their scared faces, their hunched postures, the way they expected to be kicked back out into the storm. He thought about his own family, about being alone, about what it meant to have nowhere to go and no one to turn to. "You can stay," Jake said, "not just until the storm passes, until spring, until the road's clear and you can travel safe. I have room. I have supplies. You can stay." Tessa stared at him. "You would shelter us? For months? We have nothing to offer. Your people caught in a storm," Jake said simply. "That's enough." Winter locked down hard after that first storm. The blizzards came one after another like waves crashing on a beach. 3 days of clear cold, weather then another storm. For days of quiet, then 2 storms back to back. The temperature stayed below zero for weeks at a time. The snow piled up until it covered the lower windows of Jake's house. Drifts formed that were taller than a person. The roads became impassable. Not just difficult, impossible. The colony settlement was 40 miles away, and that 40 miles might as well have been 400. No vehicles could get through. The snow was too deep. The cold too intense. Supply drops came by air when the weather cleared, but those were rare. Mostly the homestead was cut off, an island in a frozen sea. Jake gave the Theron the guest barracks. It was a separate building connected to the main house by a covered walkway. 6 rooms that Jake had built years ago, thinking he would hire seasonal workers, help during planting and harvest. But he never had, could not afford it. The rooms had sat empty, collecting dust. Now 12 Theron moved into those 6 rooms. 2 per room. They moved in carefully, quietly, like they were afraid to take up space, afraid to breathe too loud. Every few hours, one of them would peek out to check if Jake was still allowing this, still letting them stay, like they expected him to change his mind and throw them back into the cold. They were terrified those first weeks. Barely spoke except to each other in quiet, clicking whispers. Barely ate even though Jake provided food. They would take the smallest portions, eat quickly, clean their plates, and retreat back to the barracks like they were afraid of being punished for existing. Jake learned their names slowly. Tessa was the eldest, the one who spoke for the group. She had scars on her carapace from what looked like combat injuries. Old wounds healed over. She carried herself like someone who had seen bad things and survived. Beth was younger, maybe mid-20s in human years. She was quieter than the others, watched everything with those big compound eyes, listened more than she spoke. Rachel was the smallest, barely adult. She had probably been newly bonded when her male died. She stayed close to Tessa, like a daughter, staying close to a mother. The others had names too. Linda, Kate, Amy, Helen, Grace, Claire, Dana, Nancy. 12 widows with nowhere to go and nothing to their names except the clothes they wore and the fear they carried. They had been told they were worthless. That was the word Tessa used when she explained Theron culture to Jake one evening. Worthless. Female Theron belonged to males, were property. When the male died, the female lost all status, all value, all purpose. The hive might keep them if they had useful skills, might redistribute them to new males if they were young enough. But mostly widows were just discarded, thrown away like broken tools. Jake hated that, hated everything about it. But he kept his opinions to himself and just treated them like people. The homestead needed work, always needed work. Frontier living was like that, something always breaking, always needing maintenance, always needing attention. Jake had been doing it alone for years. Now he had help available, if they wanted to give it. "I need help in the greenhouse," Jake announced one morning at breakfast. He had started insisting they eat breakfast with him, in the main house, at the big table in the kitchen, not hiding in their barracks. Plants don't care about the snow, but they still need tending, watering, pruning, checking for disease. Anyone interested in learning? Silence. The Theron looked at each other, uncertain. Finally, Tessa raised one of her hands. "I will help." "Me too," Beth said quietly. Rachel nodded, did not speak, but her agreement was clear. Jake smiled. "Great. Finish eating, and I'll show you the greenhouse." The greenhouse was attached to the back of the main house, a large dome of reinforced transparent panels. Inside was warm and humid, bright with grow lights. Rows of raised beds held vegetables, tomatoes, lettuce, beans, herbs, things that could grow year-round with proper care. Jake's lifeline during the long winters when fresh food was impossible to get otherwise. He showed them how to check the soil moisture, how to prune dead leaves, how to spot the early signs of disease or pest damage, how to harvest what was ready without damaging the plants. Beth touched the tomato plant gently, her chitin fingers delicate despite looking hard. "You're teaching us?" she asked. She sounded confused, like the concept did not make sense. "Yeah," Jake said. "Why wouldn't I? We are temporary. We will leave when winter ends. Why waste time teaching temporary workers? You'll need skills when you leave," Jake said. He showed Rachel how to test soil pH. "Wherever you end up, you'll need to work. Need to survive. Might as well learn something useful while you're here." The concept seemed to stun them, teaching them for their benefit, not for his. Not because he owned them or expected something in return, just because they might need it later. Days turned into weeks. The calendar pages flipped. The storms kept coming, and slowly the Therans started emerging from their shells. Metaphorically and literally, they started appearing in the main house more often, started helping without being asked. Jake would find his dishes washed when he came in from checking the perimeter, would find repairs done that he'd been putting off. Small things, then bigger things. They organized the storage, fixed a door that had been sticking for months, patched a leak in the roof before Jake even knew it existed. At first, Jake tried to tell them they did not have to do this. They were guests, not servants. But Tessa explained it differently. "We need to contribute," she said. "Need to have purpose. Let us help. It helps us as much as it helps you." So Jake let them, but he insisted on certain things. They ate together, all of them, at the big table that seated 14 if you squeezed. 3 meals a day they all sat together. Jake asked about their days, asked their opinions on things. What vegetables should he plant in spring? Whether he should repair or replace the old tractor. Small decisions and big ones. He listened when they talked, actually listened, remembered what they said, acted on their suggestions. It shocked them every single time. "Why do you treat us as equals?" Tessa asked one night. They were cleaning up after dinner. The others had gone to the barracks, but Tessa often stayed to talk. "We are Theran females. We have no status, no value. You could order us around. We would obey. That is what we're used to. Your people living in my house," Jake said. He was washing dishes. Tessa was drying. A comfortable routine they had fallen into. "That makes you my responsibility. And my guests. I treat guests with respect. Even worthless ones." Tessa's voice was soft. Testing. Jake stopped washing, turned to look at her directly. "You're not worthless. Don't ever say that. Don't even think it. You're people. You have value just by existing. You don't need a male to give you worth. You don't need anyone's permission to matter." Tessa's eyes glistened. Theron could cry. Jake had learned that. The tears were different from human tears. Thicker, slower, but they meant the same thing. "No one has ever said that to us before," she whispered. "Then everyone else was wrong," Jake said firmly. The homestead changed after that conversation, became warmer somehow. The Therans stopped moving like frightened animals, started moving like people who had a right to be there. Their voices got louder, their laughter more frequent. Jake came home one afternoon to find them singing, actually singing, a Theran song in their clicking musical language. They were working in the greenhouse, harvesting tomatoes, and singing while they worked. Beth saw him watching. "Is this okay? Are we being too loud?" "It's perfect," Jake said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "It's exactly perfect." That night at dinner, Rachel asked Jake about his family, about why he lived alone in this big house on this frozen planet. Jake told them about his wife Anne, about his daughter Katie, about the colony raid 5 years ago, about how he had been away on business, about how he came home to find them gone. killed by pirates looking for easy targets, about how he had run to this frozen rock to get away from the memories, from the pain, from all the places that reminded him of what he lost. This homestead was supposed to be for all of us, Jake said quietly. The table was silent, everyone listening. We were going to build something together, grow old together, watch Katie grow up here. But it was just me, for 5 years. Just me in the quiet and the cold. And now, Tessa asked gently. Jake looked around the table. 12 therein faces looking back at him with compassion, with understanding, with something that might have been affection. Now it feels like a home again, he said. Beth reached across the table, took his hand in her chitin fingers. Rachel did the same from the other side. Then Tessa, then all of them, reaching across the table, connecting. Family not by blood, but by choice. Jake felt something in his chest crack open, something that had been frozen for 5 years. He had thought he came out here to die slowly, to fade away in the cold. Instead, he found people who needed him, and whom he needed just as much. The winter was long and hard, but inside the homestead it was warm, full of voices, full of life, full of purpose. For the first time in 5 years, Jake went to bed without feeling alone, and in the barracks 12 widows who'd been told they were worthless learned that they mattered after all. Spring came slowly to Frosthaven. It always did. The planet did not transition gently from one season to another. It fought every step of the way. But eventually the iron grip of winter began to loosen. The storms came less frequently. Instead of every few days, they came once a week. Then once every 2 weeks. The spaces between them grew longer. The sun stayed visible for hours instead of minutes. The quality of light changed, became warmer, less harsh. The temperature climbed, slowly, reluctantly, but it climbed, first to just below freezing, then to freezing, then above. Water that had been solid ice for months began to flow again. The sound of melting snow became constant, dripping from roofs, running in tiny streams, pooling in low places. The snow began to melt. The drifts that had been taller than a person shrank day by day. Patches of ground appeared, brown and muddy, but ground nonetheless. The world went from white to brown to the first hints of green, as buried plants woke up and remembered how to grow. The roads opened, not all at once. First the main routes got cleared, big plows from the settlement pushing through, then the secondary roads, then finally the small homestead access roads. Jake got the notification on his comm unit. Road to Miller Homestead cleared and passable. Regular traffic resumed. Jake sat at his kitchen table staring at the notification. 5 months. That was how long the Theron had been here. 5 months of winter, of working together, of becoming something he had not expected. Family. But they had agreed to stay until spring, until the roads cleared. And now the roads were clear. Time for them to go. Time for Jake to be alone again. The thought hurt more than he expected. He pulled up the transport schedules on his tablet, found ships leaving from the settlement spaceport, ships going to there in space, ships going to other colonies, ships going everywhere. Checked availability, checked costs. He had enough saved up to buy them all tickets, get them wherever they wanted to go. He found the Theron in the greenhouse, all 12 of them, working together like they had been doing it for years instead of months. They were planting the spring crops, tomatoes, peppers, squash, the vegetables that needed warm weather to thrive, working in comfortable silence, passing tools without asking, moving around each other with practiced ease. They looked up when Jake entered, 12 sets of compound eyes focusing on him, waiting. Jake felt his throat go tight. "Roads are clear," he said, kept his voice level. "Professional. Got the notification this morning. I can take you to the settlement tomorrow, help you book transport, get you wherever you need to go." The words hung in the air, heavy, final. The Theron stopped working, set down their tools, looked at each other, some kind of conversation happening without words. The way families communicated after living together long enough. Just looks, just small gestures. Tessa set down the trowel she had been holding, wiped soil from her hands carefully, walked over to Jake. The other 11 followed. They formed a loose semicircle around him, not threatening, just present. "We wish to stay," Tessa said. Her voice was calm. "Certain, if you will have us." Jake blinked. "What?" "We wish to stay. Here, at the homestead." "You don't have to stay," Jake said quickly. "I mean you're free to go. You don't owe me anything. You never did. This was just shelter until spring, until you could travel safe. That was the deal. This is the first place we have ever been free," Tessa said quietly. She took a step closer. Her 4 eyes locked on Jake's too. "The first place we have mattered, not as property of males, not as servants, not as worthless widows, as people, as individuals with value. We do not wish to leave that." Beth stepped forward, the quiet one who had slowly come out of her shell over the winter. "You taught us we have value," she said. Her voice was stronger than Jake had ever heard it. "That we can build things, create things, matter. Why would we return to a society that says we are nothing without males? Why would we go back to being property?" Rachel nodded. "You showed us what freedom looks like, what respect feels like. We have never had that. Never. Our whole lives have been about serving males, obeying, being owned. Here we are partners, contributors, family." The others murmured agreement. Clicking sounds. Rapid fire clicking that Jake had learned was the therein version of applause or agreement. A chorus of yes, of please, we want to stay. Jake felt something tight in his chest, something warm and painful at the same time. "I built this place for a family," he said. His voice came out rough, unsteady. It was supposed to be filled with people, with voices, with life. 4 or 5 years it was just empty. Just me rattling around in too much space. And this winter, he trailed off, could not quite find the words. This winter was a home again, Tessa finished for him. "Yeah," Jake said. "Yeah, it was." "Then let it continue to be a home," Tessa said, "for all of us." Jake looked at them, at 12 therein who had arrived half frozen and terrified, who had expected to be treated as servants or slaves, who had learned instead that they mattered, that they had value, that they could choose their own path. "If you stay, it won't be as guests," Jake said slowly, working through what this meant, what he was offering. "It can't be. Guests are temporary. If you stay, it has to be as partners. Equal shares in the homestead, equal say in decisions, equal ownership, not charity, not me being nice. Partnership." "We accept," Tessa said immediately. No hesitation. "We accept those terms." "All of you?" Jake looked at the others. "This is a big decision. You should talk about it. Think about it. Make sure this is really what you want." "We already talked," Beth said. "All winter we talked. About what we would do when spring came. About whether we would stay or go. We talked and we decided. Together. We want to stay. We want this to be our home." "If you'll have us," Rachel added. Softer, but just as certain. Jake felt his eyes getting hot, felt tears threatening. He had not cried since, and then Katie died, had locked that part of himself away. But now, standing in the greenhouse surrounded by 12 alien women who wanted to be his family, he felt that lock breaking. "Yeah," he said. His voice cracked. "Yeah, I'll have you. I like that. I like that a lot." Tessa moved first, crossed the distance, and wrapped her arms around Jake. All 6 of her arms. A therein hug was different from a human hug, more comprehensive, more total. Beth joined, then Rachel, then all of them. A group hug with Jake at the center, surrounded by chitin and warmth and acceptance. That night, they performed a ceremony. Tess explained it first. The ceremony of chosen family. In therein culture, most family bonds were biological. Hive connections, male ownership. But there was one type of bond that was chosen, that was built not from blood but from respect and love and decision. They performed it in the main house. In the living room, they moved the furniture to the edges, created a circle. Each of them spoke, in therein and in translated English, words about what family meant, about choice, about commitment. Tessa spoke about finding value where she expected death. Beth spoke about learning to matter. Rachel spoke about feeling safe for the first time in her life. When it came to Jake's turn, he spoke about loss, about grief, about the hollow place that had lived in his chest for 5 years, about how these 12 unlikely people had filled it without him even noticing. You came here as refugees, Jake said, as people with nowhere else to go, but you stayed as family, as people who chose each other. That means more than I can say. They sealed the ceremony with a therein tradition. Each person placed a hand on a central bowl filled with soil from the greenhouse, soil they had all worked together, soil that represented the life they were building. We are bound not by blood, Tessa said, the formal words of the ceremony, but by choice, by respect, by the work of our hands and the decision of our hearts. We are family. We are family, the others repeated, Jake included. The homestead was no longer his alone. It belonged to all of them. Equal shares, equal say, equal ownership. Jake spent the next day drawing up the legal documents, partnership papers, ownership transfers, making it official in the eyes of the law. Beth asked if this was necessary. We trust you. We don't need papers. I need papers, Jake said. Need this to be real. Need you to be protected. If something happens to me, you need to own this place. Need to be able to keep it. This makes it legally yours, not just emotionally. Tessa understood. You're giving us security. Real security. The kind that can't be taken away. Yeah, Jake said. That's exactly what I'm doing. That night, Jake went to bed in a house that was full of voices, full of movement, full of life. He lay in the dark, listening to distant conversations in therein, to laughter, to the sounds of people living. He had not felt this whole in 5 years, had not felt this right, this settled, this home. In the barracks, 12 widows who had been told they were worthless when to sleep in beds they owned, in a home they owned, with a future they owned. They had been refugees. Now they were homesteaders, partners, family, and they were never leaving. The ship arrived on a clear summer morning 4 months after the spring thaw. Jake was working in a far field with Rachel and Beth repairing fence posts when a shadow passed overhead. Not a cloud. Too fast. Too deliberate. He looked up and felt his stomach drop. Therein vessel. Large. Sleek. The kind of ship that spoke of official business and government authority. It flew low over the homestead, scanning, recording, then banked away toward the settlement 40 miles north. That's not good, Beth said quietly. She was staring at the ship with all 4 eyes wide, afraid. No, Jake agreed. It's not. The message came an hour later. Text only. Official government header. Therein diplomatic seal at the top. There an ambassador requests meeting at Miller Homestead regarding repatriation of their nationals. Tomorrow, 1000 hours. Jake read it 3 times. Felt cold despite the summer heat. Repatriation. That was a fancy word for taking people back, whether they wanted to go or not. He called everyone together in the main house, all 12 widows, told them about the message, watched their faces go from confused to frightened to determined. We knew this might happen, Tessa said. She was sitting at the head of the table, the position she had naturally taken as eldest, as speaker. The hives don't forget their property. Eventually they notice when pieces go missing. You're not property, Jake said automatically. In their eyes we are. Tessa's voice was calm, but her hands were clenched on the table. Therein law is very clear. Widows belong to the hive, must be returned for redistribution. It's tradition going back thousands of years. What does redistribution mean? Jake asked, though he suspected he knew. They assign us to new males, Rachel said quietly. She was pale, shaking slightly. Whether we want it or not, whether the males want us or not, we become property again. Servants, less than servants. Or they put us in labor camps if no males will take us, Beth added. Work us until we die. Either way, we lose our freedom. Our choices, everything. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, hot and sharp. That's not happening. The ambassador arrived the next morning at exactly 1000 hours. Jake heard the vehicles before he saw them. 3 ground transports, military style. They stopped at the front gate and didn't come farther, waiting for permission. For now, Jake walked out to meet them. He made sure to stop at the gate, his side of the gate, sending a message. This was his property, his land. They were not invited onto it. The ambassador stepped out of the lead vehicle. He was tall for a Theron, maybe 7 feet. His chiton was deep blue, almost black, polished. His robes were formal, official. He carried himself like someone used to being obeyed without question. 6 males accompanied him, armed guards. They carried weapons openly, energy rifles, sidearms, body armor, a show of force. "I am Ambassador Vrek," the tall Theron said. His translator was top quality. No static, no delay, perfect crisp English. "I have come to reclaim lost property belonging to Hive Cluster 7. Our records indicate 12 females registered to that hive are currently residing at this location." "They're here," Jake agreed. He kept his voice level, calm, but he didn't move, didn't back down. "But they're not property. They're citizens of this colony who chose to stay here. Free people making free choices. Their law does not recognize such choices from widowed females," Vrek said. His tone never changed. Formal, distant, like he was reading from a script. "They must return to the hive. Be redistributed according to tradition. This is not negotiable. They don't want to go back. What they want is irrelevant." Vrek looked at Jake the way you might look at a child who doesn't understand basic facts. "They are property of the Theron Collective. Hive Cluster 7 has filed official claim. You are harboring stolen property. Return them now, and this matter ends peacefully." Jake could see the widows watching from the house windows. Tessa front and center, her face pressed against the glass. The others behind her, all of them scared but standing together. "This is my land," Jake said quietly, dangerously quiet. "My property under colony law. The people in that house are my partners, my family, and no one is taking them. Not you, not your hive, not anyone." Vreka's expression didn't change, but something cold entered his eyes. "You risk much for discarded females. Your colony is small, vulnerable. The Theron Collective has significant influence in this sector. One word from us, and trade stops. Supply ships stop coming. Support disappears. Is that what you want? Economic isolation for 12 worthless widows?" "I risk everything for family," Jake said. "And they're not worthless. They're worth more than your entire collective if that's how you treat people." For the first time, Vreka's composure cracked slightly. His mandibles clicked. Irritation. "You have 48 hours to reconsider. Return the property or face consequences. Your colony government will be notified of your noncompliance." The vehicles left, dust trailing behind them. Jake stood at the gate, watching them go. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage barely contained. The call from the colony governor came that night. Governor Patricia Walsh. Decent woman, but practical, political. "Jake, I'm getting pressure from the Theron ambassador," she said without preamble. "He wants those widows back. Says you're violating interspecies treaty obligations." "Those treaty obligations say people can't be owned," Jake countered. "Theron law says differently, and we need Theron trade. Need their cooperation. We're a small colony. We can't afford to make enemies." "So you want to hand over 12 free people to be enslaved?" "I want you to not start an interstellar incident." Patricia's voice was tight, stressed. "I'm sorry, Jake. I know what you did for them. I know they're good people. But we can't afford conflict with the collective. We just can't. Let them go. It's not worth the risk." "It's worth everything," Jake said and ended the call. The widows were gathered in the kitchen when he came back inside. All 12 of them. Tessa stood up when she saw his face. "We heard," she said. "The walls are thin. We heard the call." "We'll go," Rachel said. Tears were running down her face. Slow, thick tears. "We won't let you suffer for us. Won't let the colony suffer." "No," Jake said. The word came out hard. Final. "Jake," Beth started. "No," he repeated. "This is your home. Our home. We defend it. Together. Against a hive fleet?" Beth asked. Her voice shook. Against diplomatic pressure? Against the entire collective? They'll crush you. Crush the colony. All for us. Then they'll have to crush us, Jake said. Because I'm not giving you up. Not now. Not ever. We're just widows, Tessa said softly. We're not worth this. Jake crossed to her, took her hands in his, looked her in the eyes. You're family. You're worth everything. And I don't abandon family. Ever. We fight. How? Tessa asked. We have no weapons, no training. We're farmers, not soldiers. Jake smiled. It was not a nice smile. Then we learn fast. Every frontier homestead has defenses, security systems, barriers, weapons. I've been putting off activating most of them because we didn't need them. Now we do. He looked around at all of them. They're going to send soldiers, going to try to take you by force. We're going to make that as difficult as possible. You're going to fight for us, Rachel said. Not a question, a statement, wonder in her voice. We're going to fight for us, Jake corrected. All of us, together. This is our home, our land, our choice. Time to defend it. They spent the next 2 days preparing. Jake activated security systems that had been dormant for years. Perimeter sensors, automated defenses, shield generators. Every homestead on Frosthaven had them. Defense against raiders, against wildlife, against the dangers of frontier living. But they also worked against unwanted visitors. Jake taught the widows how to use weapons, basic firearms, energy rifles. Nothing fancy, but enough. They were clumsy at first, scared of the guns, but fear-motivated. They learned fast. Tessa was a natural. Her combat scars weren't decorative. She'd fought before, known war. The others followed her lead. They fortified the house, reinforced doors, covered windows, created defensive positions, stockpiled supplies in case of siege. The homestead transformed from a peaceful farm into a fortress. Small, underarmed, probably doomed, but ready to fight. On the second night, Tessa found Jake checking the perimeter sensors. This is insane, she said. You know that, right? We can't win. Probably not, Jake agreed. Then why? Because some things are worth fighting for even when you can't win. Jake looked at her. You're free here. You matter here. That's worth defending. Tessa was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. Small but real. I've never had anyone fight for me before. Never been worth it. You've always been worth it, Jake said. You just needed someone to see it. The sensors pinged. Movement on the approach road. Multiple vehicles. Armed. Coming fast. The Theron were done talking. The fight was here. The Theron soldiers came at dawn. Jake had been awake for hours. Had not really slept. Just laid in bed staring at the ceiling waiting for sunrise. Waiting for what he knew was coming. The perimeter sensors lit up at 600 hours. Movement detected. Multiple contacts. Coming from the North Road. Fast. Jake triggered the alarm. The sound cut through the quiet morning like a knife. Loud. Urgent. Everyone in the homestead had been drilled on what that sound meant. Time to fight. Time to defend. The widows appeared from the barracks within seconds. Already dressed. Already armed. They moved to their positions without panic. Without hesitation. Just smooth, efficient movement born from weeks of practice. Jake watched them deploy and felt a surge of pride. These were not the terrified refugees who had collapsed at his gate. These were defenders, warriors, people ready to fight for what was theirs. 24 Theron soldiers came up the road in armored transports. They stopped at the outer fence, dismounted, spread out in tactical formation, professional, experienced. They were all male, all warriors. They wore full combat armor, carried military-grade weapons. They expected this to be easy. Walk in, round up 12 helpless widowed females, load them into transports, leave. Simple retrieval operation. They were very wrong. The first wave hit the outer fence and triggered the sensor net. The automated defenses activated. Warning shots fired into the ground in front of the advancing soldiers. Speakers blared a recorded message. This is private property. You are trespassing. Turn back now or face defensive measures. The soldiers ignored it, kept advancing, cut through the fence with plasma torches. Jake was in the main house at the central control station. He watched them come on the security monitors, counted positions, watched their formation, looking for weaknesses. Remember the drill? Jake called over the comm system. His voice went to all the defensive positions. Sectors. Overlap fire zones. Don't let them flank. Aim for legs and weapons, not kill shots. We're defending, not murdering. Understood. Tessa's voice came back. Calm. Steady. She was in the east bunker, the strongest defensive position. East sector ready. North sector ready. Beth called. She was alone in the north position, the most exposed, the most dangerous. But she had insisted, said she could handle it. Central bunker ready, Rachel said. She was coordinating, watching all the sectors, calling out threats. She had turned out to have a gift for tactical awareness. The other widows checked in. All positions manned. Already, the soldiers reached the main defensive line, a low barrier wall made of reinforced concrete. Nothing fancy but solid, good cover. They tried to vault over it, hit the pressure plates. Automated stun fields activated. 3 soldiers went down convulsing. Not dead, not permanently injured, just out of the fight. The others scattered, took cover, started returning fire. Energy bolts burning through the air, hitting the barriers, scorching the ground. The widows returned fire, coordinated, overlapping fields. When one sector reloaded, another covered. When soldiers tried to flank, they ran into crossfire. When they bunched up, they hit traps, snares, foam grenades. Non-lethal but effective. Tessa's sector held like iron. She moved like a trained soldier, firing, repositioning, firing again. 3 soldiers tried to rush her bunker. She dropped all 3 with precise shots to the legs. They went down screaming, not dead, but very much out of fight. Beth's sector was under the heaviest pressure. The north wall was the weakest point, and the soldiers knew it. They concentrated fire there, trying to break through, trying to overwhelm the lone defender. But Beth did not break, did not run. She held her position with grim determination, firing, ducking, firing again. Her shots were not as accurate as Tessa's, not as practiced, but she made up for it with sheer stubborn refusal to give ground. North sector taking heavy fire, Beth called, her voice strained but steady. Could use support. Rachel, redirect automated defenses to north sector, Jake ordered. Redirecting. Rachel confirmed. The automated turrets swiveled, started firing suppression patterns at the soldiers attacking Beth's position, not trying to hit them, just keeping their heads down, giving Beth breathing room. The battle raged for 2 hours. The soldiers tried everything. Frontal assault, failed. Flanking maneuvers, failed. Concentrated fire on one position, failed. The widows held every sector, held every inch of ground. By noon, the soldiers were exhausted, frustrated. They had expected easy prey. Instead, they found organized resistance, coordinated defense. 12 widows who fought like demons to protect what was theirs. The commander called retreat. The soldiers fell back, dragging their wounded, loading into transports, leaving behind scorch marks and shattered pride. Jake watched them go on the monitors, let out a breath he had been holding for hours. Status report. He called over the comm. East sector secure. No casualties, Tessa reported. North sector secure. Minor burns but operational, Beth said. She sounded exhausted but alive. Central bunker secure. All systems functional, Rachel added. The others checked in. Everyone accounted for. Everyone alive. Some minor injuries. Burns. Bruises. But nothing serious. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. But Jake knew this was not over. The soldiers would report back. The ambassador would escalate. This was just the first round. What Jake did not expect was the media. Someone had been recording. Drones. Satellites. News agencies monitoring the situation. The footage went out on galactic feeds within hours. Video of 12 Theran widows defending their home. fighting their own people for the right to stay free. The story exploded across known space. Comments, shares, reactions. People were outraged, inspired, moved. A news reporter showed up at the gate that afternoon. Human woman from one of the major networks. She asked for an interview. Tessa agreed to speak. She stood at the gate, still wearing her tactical gear, burns on her carapace, exhaustion in her eyes, but standing tall, standing proud. "Why are you fighting?" the reporter asked. "Why not just go back? Avoid all this conflict." Tessa looked directly at the camera, her 4 eyes steady, her voice clear. "We were told our entire lives that we were nothing without males," she said, "that we had no value, no purpose, no worth. We believed it because we had never known anything different. Then we came here, to this homestead, to Jake Miller, who treated us like people, who taught us we had always been something, always had value, not because of males, not because of hive status, just because we existed." She gestured back at the homestead, at the house and the greenhouse, and the fields they had worked together. "This is our home, the first place we have ever been truly free, the first place we have mattered as individuals, not property. Why would we give that up? Why would we return to slavery when we have tasted freedom?" Her voice got stronger, harder. "We choose to defend this. We choose to fight for our right to live as free people. And if the collective wants to take that away, they will have to kill us, because we will never go back willingly. Never." The interview went viral. Within a day, it had been viewed 1 billion times. Comments poured in, support, donations, offers of help. Public pressure mounted on the Theron government. Protests started on Theron worlds. Other widows seeing Tessa's words, seeing her defiance, starting to ask why they had to be property, why they could not choose. The galactic community erupted. Ambassadors from other species condemned the widow laws, called them slavery, called for change. Trade partners threatened sanctions. The Theron Collective found itself facing a public relations nightmare. What had been a simple property retrieval had become an interstellar incident, a symbol of oppression that people rallied against. Within a week, the collective backed down, issued a formal statement. New guidance for widow laws. Widows could choose their own paths, could leave hives if they wished, could own property, make decisions. It was not everything, not full equality, but it was a start, a crack in a system thousands of years old. The ambassador sent a formal apology to Jake's homestead. The soldiers were withdrawn. The claim on the 12 widows was dropped. The homestead stood, battered but victorious. Winter came again, as it always did on Frosthaven. The cold returned. The snow fell. But this time the homestead was ready. Full of people, full of life. Jake was teaching ice fishing one afternoon. The lake behind the homestead froze, solid in winter, thick enough to walk on, to drill through, to fish through the holes. 5 widows sat with him on the ice. Tessa, Beth, Rachel, Linda, Kate, learning to drill holes, bait hooks, wait in comfortable silence for fish that might or might not bite. "Think you'll ever leave?" Jake asked Tessa. The question was casual, but the answer mattered. Tessa looked back at the homestead. Smoke rose from the chimneys, warm against the cold sky. Lights glowed in windows. Through the glass, she could see the others, her sisters, working, laughing, living. "Leave home," Tessa said. She smiled, small but genuine. "Never. This is where we belong." A transport landed at the settlement that afternoon. Jake got the notification. Not Theron. Different species. Refugees from a conflict in another sector. 8 of them. Families displaced by war. Nowhere to go. The settlement was full. Overcrowded. No room. Jake pulled up the manifest. Read their story. Looked at Tessa. "We have room," she said before he could ask. "We do," Jake agreed. The transport arrived at the homestead at dusk. 8 refugees stepped out into the snow. 2 families. Adults. Children. They looked tired, scared, lost. Tessa greeted them at the door. "Welcome," she said. "Come inside. It's warm. We have food. You're safe here." They stared at her, at the therein widow, greeting them like she owned the place. Because she did. This was her home, too. Jake appeared behind Tessa. "Come on in. We'll get you settled. Figure out the rest tomorrow." The homestead family grew that night. Grew again a month later, when more refugees arrived. Kept growing through the winter, through the spring, through the years that followed. The homestead became known across the sector. The place where the lost could find home, where the discarded could find value, where people who had been told they were worthless learned they mattered. Jake never expected to build something like this. Had come to Frosthaven to hide, to grieve, to fade away slowly in the cold. Instead, he built a family, not of blood, but of choice, of people who chose each other, who fought for each other, who made home together in a harsh, frozen world. And that choice, that simple decision to shelter 12 refugees from a storm, that changed everything. For them, for him, for the galaxy. Because some things were worth fighting for, worth defending, worth building. Home was one of them. Family was another. Freedom was a third. And on a small homestead on a frozen world at the edge of known space, 12 widows who had been told they were nothing proved they were everything. They proved that choice mattered, that freedom mattered, that people mattered. And they never left, never gave up, never stopped fighting for home they had chosen and the family they had built, because this was where they belonged. This was home.